the globally recognized main topic of the day. Today we'll talk about the situation at the front, and I have to say that for Ukraine, it's somewhat worse than what the Ukrainian media themselves are reporting, especially the telemarathon. For example, here it is mentioned that there are problems now near Kramatorsk, near Konstantinovka, and in some other regions. Let's examine why this is happening and the reasons behind it. Look, right now Zelensky, with these letters and strikes, has basically managed to drive the spirit of Anchorage away from the negotiations. And Putin, just like before, is demanding the liberation of the regions that were included in the Russian constitution from the Ukrainian armed forces. Earlier, it seemed there was an agreement with Trump about withdrawing from Donetsk region, of which only 20 or 25% remains, under Ukraine's control and dividing along the current line of contact. Zelensky achieved a negative victory, and now what? Now, if suddenly Russia manages to advance, then Zelensky faces a difficult situation where he will either have to give up something else or fight. Again, until the very end, the elections and these options didn't change much, but the situation has significantly worsened. And it keeps getting worse every day because right now the territories under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces are in the north of Donetsk region centered around Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. Carrying out the Kremlin's threats requires capturing these cities, and the entire defense of the Ukrainian armed forces in Donbass basically depends on them. The main thing for Russia right now is this, and experts tell us that all other attempts at an offensive have absolutely no strategic significance when creating a buffer zone in the Kharkiv and Sumy regions. But the battle for Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region will not be anything like a victory in the spirit of Anchorage. That's why the Ukrainian armed forces concentrated their main forces specifically in the Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia regions. And now the Kremlin's goal is to get closer to these regions. Here is a map, it's relatively new. There might be newer ones on Deep State, but not everything is being published there right now either, so where to get completely new information is a mystery. But again, the situation is dire. Right now, for example, there is an assault on Konstantinovka. After many months of fighting, by the end of 2025, the armed forces of the Russian Federation captured the Toretsk agglomeration. And they began the assault on Konstantinovka. This is the southernmost city of the Kramatorsk agglomeration. In terms of area, it is larger than Pokrovsk, which has already been captured at this point. And here we need to return again to why all this is important. Well, because these fortress cities have been prepared for many years, since 2014 or maybe even earlier. Beyond them, well, it's not exactly steppe, but in any case, there's almost nothing there that can be considered fortifications. And since the fortification line remains behind, the Ukrainian armed forces are ahead in case of capture. The same goes for Konstantinovka and other cities. There's almost nothing left to hold on to. Accordingly, the war may change its character from one of relative stability. This is approaching a negative scenario when you'll have to retreat every day. And at the same time, we have to give credit to the Ukrainian armed forces. They held back Russian troops on the southern outskirts of the city for a long time. I'm referring to Konstantinovka. And Ukrainian positions in the south still remain. Right now, fighting is taking place for Vivanpolye between Toretsk and Konstantinovka, but these groups have already been bypassed by the Russian armed forces. They advanced along the western and eastern outskirts of the city, and I have to say, quite successfully. In recent weeks, Russian troops in the southwest of Konstantinovka managed to break through Ukrainian positions in the suburbs, and even Ukrainian sources are reporting this now. And they reached the northwestern part of the city through the village of Ilinovka. I'll show you an approximate map of all this now. Again, you have to understand that the situation is constantly changing, and what we're seeing now is the current map. In just a few hours, it could already be outdated. Here you can see Ilinovka. Here it shows the area the Russian troops moved through, and here is the gradual expansion. Here is the factory, which can also be considered a fortress, and some other facilities. The fewer such facilities Ukraine has left, the harder it is to resist. And another Russian group, which was advancing along the eastern outskirts of Konstantinovka, came out through the suburb of Novodmitrovka, towards the city center. Again, I just showed this. Meanwhile, several large groups of the Ukrainian armed forces are now behind Russian lines and are being resupplied by air with heavy drones. And we shouldn't forget about the drones themselves, which are constantly being improved, their payload is increasing and their speed is increasing. Many things that used to seem impossible are now increasing. And in many ways, analysts say again that this delay in the Russian offensive, which used to be extremely active before, this is the result of Ukraine using modern drones and, most importantly, the tactics of fighting with these very drones against the enemy's superior forces. Well, not always superior, but quite often. As a result, a line of death is created. It's like a zone, or even a strip of death, not just a couple hundred meters or even a couple kilometers deep, but 30 kilometers or even 100 kilometers. Now they say that there are these strips both on the Ukrainian side and on the Russian side. And nothing alive can survive there if it ends up there, and if anything does survive, it's with extreme difficulty. Not to mention tanks, some self-propelled guns, and so on and so forth. Now, the fewer people there are, the less equipment, the smaller the groups moving in both directions, the safer it is, because it wasn't like this before. Before, huge crowds would rush forward, well, of course, concentrating in certain areas, and that was it. But now there are so many drones that no one will rush anywhere. They're even afraid to get out of the trench. It's like how I used to watch war movies, Soviet ones, and they showed that even under full enemy fire, with everything zeroed in, you could quickly run from one crater to another, and then, well, bullets would be whistling by. But now you can't hide in a crater because a drone might drop something on you from above, or it might crash into you, or something else could happen. That's it. So you can't really consider those places as cover anymore. Trenches, foxholes, craters without overhead protection, even overhead cover doesn't always save you. In short, under such unfavorable conditions, like in Toretsk, Ukrainian forces can still put up resistance. But they don't hold out for long, as we can see now. On top of that, the Russians are infiltrating quickly, and this affects the defense. So, on one hand, there are the Ukrainian troops who are trying to hold out for quite a long time. And on the other hand, there are the Russian troops with vast experience in infiltration, encirclement, or intercepting Ukrainian military forces. It turns out it's not exactly a zugzwang, but something similar. And right now, as far as we can tell, the Russian army once again has the advantage, which is what I'm talking about in this video. The capture of Konstantinovka is necessary for the Russian army to amass forces in the city districts in order to continue the offensive north toward Kramatorsk through Druzhkovka. By the way, the troops that are stuck on the approaches to Druzhkovka are waiting for this. If they reunite, then once again it will be tough for everyone defending there. On top of that, we also have Slavyansk and an attack aimed at capturing it. What are analysts saying about this? The Russian troops who captured Seversk in 2025 are continuing their advance along the Seversky Donets River. By the way, I was there. It's a beautiful place. There are underground and above-ground monasteries there. It was very interesting. Now, of course, it's interesting. Alright, towards Slavyansk, it was assumed that this operation would be supported by the group operating on the opposite bank of the river, which is trying to capture the city of Liman. But this group not only failed to accomplish the main task, but also got stuck itself, plus lost some locations that had previously been captured. Accordingly, this has a huge impact on the advance of the troops, and these troops have slowed down right now just south of the Seversky Donets. The advance is moving very slowly. There, the Russian offensive was stopped in the area of Krivaya Luka. The offensive between the river and the Seversky Donets-Donbass Canal continues. Russian troops are now focused on capturing the village of Raya Alexandrovka. I think you've heard about it. It covers Slavyansk from the southeast. But overall, if we look at the general situation, the speed of the Russian troops' advance in this region has significantly decreased since the capture of Seversk. But it could speed up if the Ukrainian armed forces' defense farther south, near Konstantinovka, continues to deteriorate. In addition to all this, there is a very difficult situation in the east of the Zaporizhzhia region. Here is the Zaporizhzhia region itself. It shows roughly where things are happening, and here is the situation we have. For several months now, Russian troops have been advancing through the town of Gorodok, more specifically towards the main stronghold of the Ukrainian armed forces in the central part of the Zaporizhzhia region. This is the city of Orekov. The main forces are concentrated there. It's also a conglomeration. If something happens to it again, things will get much worse afterwards. Understanding this, Ukrainian troops continue to hold many locations in this region. After Ukrainian attacks on the border of Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions in winter and early spring, they broke through the Russian barrier there by 10 to 15 kilometers. The Russian armed forces' offensive halted outside Huliaipol. The Russian command was then forced to transfer large forces in order to stop the Ukrainian forces. And this did allow them to stop the Ukrainian advances, but it also slowed down the Russian advance. And now there's a complicated situation there, which can be described as a stalemate. Here we also have a map of the operations. It shows the advance of the Russian armed forces. And this too, and all of this says a lot. It's not yet possible to completely eliminate the pocket that formed as a result of Ukrainian attacks on the border of Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions. The Russian Federation and the Russian command are now trying to solve the problem of covering the northern flank of the group advancing on Orekov in a radical way by attacking the settlement of Pokrovska. This is currently the main logistical hub of the Ukrainian armed forces in this area. Russian assault troops have reached the Vovcha River at the end of May. This is directly south of Pokrovska, and the ongoing clashes on this flank continue. As for the army, the 5th Combined Arms Army, having received reinforcements from near Pokrovska, has now resumed its advance eastward toward Orikhiv. This is extremely dangerous for Ukrainian forces. By early June, the Russian armed forces had reached the line of Cherevna, Ohulia, and Polska, Verkhnaya Tersia, Vozdvizhevka, or Vozdvizhevka, most likely Vozdvizhevka. Sorry about that. Having captured all 4 villages, and now they can move into the rear of the Ukrainian group defending Malotokmachka and Orikhiv itself. Of course, there are no simple solutions here, not from either side. Everything is extremely complicated. Things are getting worse. All of this again with those very letters from Zelensky. Yesterday he already stated again that Russia is not interested in peace. We will keep fighting. And today, by the way, I already made a short video. Shorts and on TikTok about this. The attack on Peter, on Kronstadt, and some other settlements, including Tyumen, by the way, that refinery there once again. Let's see what's happening. On the night of June 6, drones attacked a number of targets on the territory of the Russian Federation. St. Petersburg and the Leningrad region were hit, as well as an oil depot in Slavyansk, Krasnodar Krai, and the Antipinsky refinery in Tyumen. There are fires, and I'll show you a video. Some of them also show the attacks with refineries burning. One of them caught fire in the area of Bolshaya Izhora, where the 15th Ammunition Depot of the Russian Navy is located. Shells, torpedoes, and probably mines started to detonate there, and the noise was so loud that... Wait, you can't see me, I showed this map. And the noise was so loud that many local residents were really scared. Despite the bans, videos were published. Reactions were published. So, more or less, you can get some information about this. What else? So, we don't need this browser, let's remove it. And now we have this picture, which we don't need. So, in the Leningrad region, I already mentioned the fire. In Petersburg's Lomonosovsky district, the Research Institute of Marine Thermal Engineering was attacked. This is an enterprise that creates underwater weapons. And in Peterhof, drones tried to strike an oil depot. On top of that, a naval cadet corps was also hit. By the way, this is the second attack on Petersburg this week. The first one happened on June 3rd, right on the day of the opening of the Petersburg Economic Forum. At that time, the participants were walking and saw smoke rising from burning sites on the horizon. There are problems in Kronstadt. In the Krasnodar region, drones hit an oil depot in Ust-Labinsk. That's about 400 kilometers from the front line. We're told that the fire covered an area of 5,000 meters. That's a huge area. The Kazakh oil depot has a tank farm with 28 tanks with a total capacity of almost 15,000 cubic meters. They don't store oil there. They store gasoline grades I-92, I-95, and diesel fuel. On top of that, the same Antipinsky oil refinery in Tyumen is one of the largest private oil refineries in Russia, with a design capacity of 9 million tons of crude oil per year. And here's what happens here. The fire here is really huge because of the glow. You can see it at night, and the smoke rises in a column into the sky. This is just a complete disaster. Yeah, well, there's some swearing here. Anyway, believe me, what that young man said, I assume the one filming, is exactly how it is. Well, what can you say? Zelensky announced that since Putin wants to fight, Zelensky apparently doesn't mind either. And now the attack is underway. Ukrainian drones, again, Zelensky reported that on the night of June 6th, they struck Navy arsenals. In Russia, in the St. Petersburg area, specifically the base in Kronstadt and the oil depot in the Krasnodar region, he's joking again, I don't even know how many times now. He believes repeating the joke makes it funnier, calling it Ukrainian sanctions for aggression and crediting the Armed Forces, Security Service, and Main Intelligence Directorate of Ukraine. It's time to end this war, says Zelensky, but the Russian leader wants to keep fighting, so Ukrainian sanctions for this aggression are in effect. I have no doubt that same thousand Zelensky talking heads from the blogging crowd who belong to the president's office and are part of this group of talkative, powerful leaders will repeat this joke more than once. Long-range sanctions, short-term sanctions, powerful sanctions, explosive sanctions. We'll probably be hearing these jokes for many more months to come. Well, while things are still being decided, I suggest we listen to serious people. These are our powerful leaders. They weren't in yesterday's episode. By the way, the episode was interesting. And it was exactly about Zelensky's letter, about Putin's response to it, and also about another response to Putin's response to Zelensky's letter. So check it out on my channel. It's the second to last video before this one. So, here we have powerful leaders. We turn on our TV, but first let's probably measure everything that's been said with our power meter. That's all for us. I think it's already going to be powerful. And it really is just like that. So let's switch over. Here we have Riva. Riva is a former minister of social policy who once said that pensioners live poorly because there's not enough money since they don't eat much. Riva himself is a skinny extreme character who is always shouting in the studio, but apparently he's starving and that's why his nervous system is exhausted. By the way, this guy could very well join Tuka and some other characters in the 60-plus core. Now, Ukrainian men over the age of 60 are being urged saying, "Go as volunteers, we won't send you to the assault troops. You can realize yourself anywhere, anytime, and in any position." For some reason, no one is responding, but these gray-haired characters keep telling us about it. And it's better to protect yourself from Riva with an eyepiece and power, because this penetrating radiation of the all-conquering counter-offensive just naturally covers everything. Just naturally covers everything, without protection. So be careful. So why is it uncomfortable, right?
My birthday is celebrated with greetings.
Tanyushka, happy birthday. You're great. I'm also great, setting a man's example. But just imagine, they're men, they're husbands, they're not like mine at all. Well, maybe you notice it with Andrei Pokishchev, with Roman Pokishchev is good, and thank God Putin's good is coming to an end. They need to decide who they are, like how to send them to the front.
Listen, they're already figuring it out, Mr. Andrei. For now, it's not a parabellum. For now, it's money, and that's fine. When does Putin run out of money? When does Putin run out of money?
They're already running out, and it's serious.
Riva has all the answers. Look, they literally let the person say just 2 words. He has already defeated everyone, insulted everyone, Putin is running out of money. Only Riva took a strong sip of water and apparently saved the nation from defeat with that. Just wonderful. Then we have Pokazachin by Brizgam. I haven't heard him. And I showed you the character yesterday. All right, let's see where he is here. He's reading.
Where are they? Where are they? I'm dealing with this at home.
In general, a handsome big military guy. But we also have this. This is some ex-commander Kupol. They're all skinny too. Young Lenin is sleeping. Kupol is pitching some concept about Oreshnik to Voloshin. That not every Oreshnik flies. Kupol apparently knows this better than the others.
There are about 5,000 warheads nearby. We don't really know which of them are actually flying. That's why they and Oreshnik encountered quite a lot of explosions. And he goes on to say,
which Oreshnik flies and which doesn't, we don't know. So if we don't know for sure, why talk about it? Honestly, I have little idea why all this is necessary. But young Lenin apparently will decide now and say something.
Not everyone had this path removed. We don't know how it will reach or affect us. It's a form of intimidation and moral pressure. Maybe. I wouldn't say that they can...
Young Lenin said something, but of course no one listened to him. Kupol moves forward, tearing the enemy's body with his teeth and continues talking, sometimes telling the harsh truth, chopping it up into a salad called truth.
Zaporizhzhia, as if he had destroyed a lot.
It's hard to translate all of this, yes, and in principle it's not worth it because this is a set of words that's difficult to translate. But there's also this. This, again, is Kupol, but now with rosy cheeks. And he's talking to another character who, well, you can decide for yourself who he looks like. It'll be interesting to hear. Someone else. And he says that they need to attack, and that's probably why he put on some clean camouflage. Well, wonderful. Very graceful.
In military science, a proper offensive is number 1, because you can't solve any problems with defense.
Defense, right, so we don't need fortifications. Let's get rid of them. Let's attack all the time. Wonderful.
Thank you for the subtitles. How can we liberate our territory by defending? On the contrary, we are preparing for defense. And those are the borders of 91. But still, we are preparing for defense.
And those are the 1991 borders, right? The borders of 91, right?
We launch an offensive and liberate our territory. When brigade members on the front line say they're well prepared, protected, and have a management and cooperation system, they'll move forward.
Well, yes, maybe, but you know what the problem is? The thing is, the guys, the ones on the front line, they won't say that. And simply because everything is the opposite of what this very Kupol is talking about. So, that's how it is. Write everything you think about this. Goodbye, everyone. Karginen?
Commander of the Engineer Sapper Platoon. She is 21 years old, and this romantic dream almost led her to the infantry. In the conversation, the girl said she planned to join the infantry, but instead went to study in the Engineer Sapper Company.
We used to see each other daily until recently, and now you don't know when you'll visit again. It's tough, though we were mentally prepared. I like how it explodes and burns. We were taught how to set up fortifications, build roads, build bridges, and set up pontoon crossings for ourselves. We get along well, and they're obedient. You can acquire the skills.